Hi everybody, I'm Josh Constein here at TechCrunch Disrupt SF, and I'm here with Peter Thiel of Founders Fund and Mithril Capital. Now you've talked a lot about how you need to choose companies that might seem crazy at first to the average person, otherwise it would be an idea that somebody had already taken. How do you tell the difference between crazy and crazy like a fox, something that will actually pan out?
Well, you try to just always evaluate the substance afresh. So, does the technology work? You can ask questions about what's the prehistory of the founders. Have they been working together for a while? Are they going to give up at the first sign of trouble? So I think you want to always focus on the substance. There are no shortcuts.
So you try to avoid coming in with biases about what can and can't work ahead of time.
Yeah, there's always a temptation to come up with all sorts of sort of one-sentence rules, and we're as guilty of that as anybody. But I think what's gone best is you find something interesting about it, and then you try not to get to a yes or no decision right away. You try to really understand the substance, keep an open mind, and understand that. So substance over process every time.
So it's surely a hard question to answer because it's very generic and every startup is different. But when you hear an idea that you're wondering if it can really work, what is your go-to follow-up question to ask an entrepreneur pitching you about what is their philosophy or their long-term vision and how likely they are to succeed at it?
Well, there's you always want to get the team, the technology, and the business strategy. So you have to get all three of those to work. And so if people want to talk about the technology, we'll talk about the people and the business strategy. So you go to the other two topics if they don't want to talk about them that much.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your philosophy and the philosophy of the new rich that's come out of the technology scene. You're known for having very strong perspectives. I personally went to the Seasteading Festival ephemerisle. Really fascinated by that way of looking at things where we can solve the problems ourselves. We don't necessarily have to wait for somebody else. What do you think? Do you think that there's a different value system amongst people who are becoming wealthy out of the technology scene opposed to industries of old?
It's always hard to generalize, but I do think there's probably something different whether you made your money in computers or in, say, resources in the Congo or something like that. So I do think that there's something generally good about technology and generally very positive about this as an industry. I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I do really believe that. I think philanthropy is an area that deserves to also be rethought, and I always like asking these contrarian questions. And so if the contrarian question in business is, what great company is nobody starting? In philanthropy, the contrarian question I think is always something like, what great cause does nobody want to support? And so I always, one of the questions I always like to ask is, why is a cause unpopular? I don't want to give money to popular causes. I feel those are well enough funded. I think it's the unpopular causes that deserve to get more.
Yeah, to me, it seems like when people come up so quickly in the technology world because of the way that equity structures work and how quickly you can get to market and make something really big with the modern distribution channels, that if somebody becomes rich in 5 years, it feels like maybe that money doesn't really belong all in my bank account. Like it kind of belongs to the world. It was kind of random that it ended up with me, opposed to somebody who maybe came up through a more hierarchical world, worked every day for 20 years, and when they get to the end of it, they say, this money really is mine. Like, do you see any of that perspective that people feel like they don't really have a right to the money that they've earned in technology and that it's better for them to give it away? Or what is the philosophy of people who are taking the giving pledge or making those really big donations?
Well, I think in general it is that they want to give something back to society. I'm not sure if I think they mostly do think that I'm not sure they deserve all of it, but I think they deserve some of what they got. I think the reality is that what's unusual about the tech industry in Silicon Valley is that the inventors are capturing anything at all. The history of innovation has been one where most of the people who invent things get nothing at all. And so the Wright brothers came up with the first airplane but didn't get rich. Or even the original Edison versus Tesla. You could say Tesla was the greater inventor and that was the better way to go, but somehow Edison edged out Tesla. And so most of innovation has actually not gone to the people who came up with things. You have to make money. You have to do two things. Number one, you have to create something of value for the world, and number two, you have to capture some fraction of the value you create. And often people have completely failed at doing the second. So I think Silicon Valley is very unusual in that there's this large class of innovative people that are actually able to capture some fraction of the value they're creating.
That's great. So now that we have founders who are making a fortune by making something everyone in the world wants, hopefully they can make some difference for the better in the world as well.
Yes, and I always would say that you want to make a difference for the better in a way that's not just looking for status, not just in a respectable way, but people should try to be courageous in their philanthropy, just as they're courageous when they started a company.
Be brave and donate. Thank you very much for your perspective, Peter. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone.